Welcome to our latest Three Takes on AI podcast. Campbell shares a recent Gartner forecast that organizations will spend over $2.5 trillion worldwide on AI, but most CEOs are seeing limited to no returns. We revisit the ROI challenges from AI and a few light bulb lessons from the past. Listen to our podcast and subscribe at threetakesonai.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Takes on AI. This podcast is right before July 4th, so we're all getting excited for July 4th weekend. And so we thought we would tackle an exciting topic, which is around the ROI for AI. We continue to see discussions of vibe coding not making it out of production, companies that are deploying AI and not seeing the return on their value. And I thought I would kick this off because I think the reality is that people are leading with the wrong discussion, and that is they're leading with the tech first. And if you're leading with the technology, you want to add, if you're implementing a home stereo and you want the best of everything, great, right? Maybe you're investing too much or too little. But if you're a business that has and you're not an AI only company and you have a business strategy of things that you want to achieve and accomplish, but you're leading with the technology, it's going to be very hard to actually gain a return. And one of the interesting pieces of research I did this morning, it's not just about the moment that you invest in AI because models change, the environment changes, the cost of tokens change. And so compared to traditional IT, it's hard to maintain a control point over what those costs are going to be unless you control the architecture and you align it to a business outcome. So in my mind, when we think of ROI, we think of governance and an AI strategy. We need to start the foundation with why are we doing this in the first place and what's the value to the business and a metric that can be measured and accounted for. And I think most of what we're hearing about is organizations that don't do that. So Campbell, I'll let you take the next run at this.
Right. So I think the genesis for us coming back on this discussion around ROI was, the Gartner uh, report that came out that stated that they are estimating that we're currently at about a $2.52 trillion spend on AI by the end of 2026. However, that is then countered by PwC's report that states that 50, I think it's 53% of CEOs are basically saying they're seeing no value, no uptick. And so I think that was the reason why I think we wanted to come back on this one. And I think to your point, Brian, yes, it it gets into discussions on change. It's a larger shift that is required in order to truly see the value, I believe, in AI. Because if you just take it from the fact that, in 1 year we've invested this money and we're not seeing anything back, I think people are just freaking out about that amount of money and, not seeing measurable results. But we're in uncharted territory to a certain degree. And we can get into the additional discussions that it's pretty much the same as any other sort of wave of technology adoption in the past. But what if, this is my view, what if this is what AI infrastructure investment looks like? Because if you consider electricity build out, the internet build out, cloud build out, utilities being built out, there's a high degree of obviously investment in capital, capex, and infrastructure that doesn't necessarily pay for itself in the first year or the first 2 years, but it sort of will play out over a longer period of time on the value that we get from that component that was put into place, whether it was like water piping or whatever it may be. So maybe this is just what we're seeing is just this sort of phase of infrastructure investment that is being put into place, and I think people have got their heads in the wrong space. Um, so, the other thing too that I'm really suspicious about, and I did sort of make a couple of notes here, is the 12% that claim that they're already getting big ROI from AI. I don't believe that that is true. I think that they are looking at pre-existing automation and analytics, and the fundamentals of technology that are in place. So, I've got a bit more of a sort of a contrarian view about this, and I think that it's people are in a space right now that we've never been in before. And I
Mm.
think that they're applying traditional views on ROI payback. And, we've had this discussion before. Everything has to be risk adjusted ROI payback. And, that's my sort of initial take is that I think we're just in a new wonderful, scary
Mm.
world of the sort of the play out of this, and it's going to take longer to play out. But I do agree that we're in the trough of disillusionment. I don't know if that's going to trigger a bubble burst, but we'll see. Mike, what do you think?
So I agree with your assessment. I think we're dancing a bit on some of the lines here, and I'm going to do my usual, like I'm going to step over the line and maybe kick the bucket over. And um, so I think we also, the three of us and people who will watch this, probably need to understand we live in kind of our own bubble as it relates to AI, right? We
Mm.
we live it, we talk about it, we use it every day. The majority of people do not. In or out of business, the majority of people do not use AI. So they don't see it, feel it every day. That said, there are a number of things that have to get put on the table around ROI. One is the horizon for payback for ROI. As Campbell, as you started to say, if you're going to measure things in 12, 18, 24-month increments, you're probably not going to be very happy with your results with your AI investment because it takes a long time for any notable change in a business or an industry. Compound that with, oh, we have to build all these data centers, and you don't build a data center in a short period of time. Now, I might also argue that by the time we get a lot of these data centers built, we will have already moved on from AI, or we will have figured out a way to not need as much power, and that is going to create another ROI issue. The traditional models of measuring almost anything have to be addressed, right? If we are going to start using more AI, more robotics, now we have to change how we measure employee output, right? If we are delivering more things electronically or through a smaller number of delivery vehicles, like Amazon delivers its own stuff, that changes how we may look at distribution relative to FedEx and UPS. Maybe their business declines, but it doesn't mean that distribution is off. So you have to look at the whole thing. And then the 12% statistic is interesting because maybe it's because of my mood today, but I'll take the pessimistic side, which is 88% are not getting or ROI. So the 12% are outliers, which we've talked about before. So kick the outliers away, and you see a massive problem here. And a lot of that problem is in the humans, not in the technology. They don't understand the process that needs to be changed. They don't understand what good looks like. They purchase or implement the wrong solutions, and on and on and on. And it just makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to achieve ROI.
So I like the electricity discussion because think about Edison and what he had to do to make the light bulb become a standard, right? At the time, you have gas-powered light. People were putting coins into meters to get the fuel, right? So the end desire is to have everybody using light bulbs. That's really where he started, but he had to figure out how to generate the power. He knew he needed, it wasn't just the technology that he excelled at, it was business, right? He needed streets to examples and things to show people so that they would want to buy a light bulb. Maybe that's simplifying it, but that's really to the point. And so what I think is important is sometimes we just need to think about the light bulb aspect of this and how people can use it. So we use it every day. I do. I use it, I have more arguments with Claude and ChatGPT these days, and Perplexity, as I joked before, does perplex me at times. But the reality is that's the entry point that we see. But a business who's looking to put in an agentic workflow to automate customer support, or they're looking for a new approach to providing fulfillment, or to Mike, your point, a better distribution model. Those are much more complicated. And even if AI wasn't in the middle, developing that solution would be complex and hard to see the end of the ROI discussion. And so we really need to think about how the technology is secondary to the business outcome that you're trying to achieve and how they come together. And I think we spend way too much time. I think the press spends too much time on the ROI and of the technology and not the business outcome, number one. And truthfully, I think a lot of the people that are talking about the ROI of AI don't understand AI. So they talk
Right.
about the technology, they don't understand that the different impact, the different types of AI, the different types of agentic technology, and how that all comes together. I saw somebody comparing today MCP, agents, and RAG. And I thought, you can't compare the three. You need all three. They don't have anything directly, they're not related. They're related to delivering an AI value point, but you can't have agents talking without MCP, and you probably can't have good AI to the agents without RAG. So why are we comparing three things that don't belong into that model? And that's because a lot of what's out there um, is not balanced between the business and the tech itself. And that's
Yeah.
impacting probably ROI projections as well.
Yeah.
It,
Like, so I
yeah.
just want to quickly just jump on something. The interesting thing about using the electricity example, or reflecting on the electricity, is that one of the things, I mean, Edison, to do what he did, he was basing it on a DC voltage infrastructure. That was his view, that the DC was the way to go. Whereas you had Tesla and his group advocating alternating current. And they both had shortcomings, they both had limitations, but the true value was realized because of AC voltage versus DC voltage. So even in the electricity example, if we use it, there was this infighting um, sort of positioning around what was the base infrastructure that would be used to create electricity services, to the city of New York, or et cetera, those sort of things. That's sort of one example. And I think it sort of plays into the view that, sort of touching on your other example, is you don't get ROI from a press release. That would be one thing I would say, is that uh, all of these announcements, all of this sort of puffing of chests or beating of chests, or sort of, putting lipstick on pigs and things like that. It's just that's where the issue is that we are today. I think really, to your point, I think Mike, you touched on it, and Brian, you alluded to it earlier, is that the fundamental conversation nowadays has to shift from which model are we going to use to which processes are we going to automate, which data are we going to use, and which controls do we have to actually change within our organization. I did that keynote for a European organization where it's what are the compliance requirements that we have to adhere to? And you have to build out a common evidence base that you can feed any sort of compliance requirement that you need. So there's all of this underlying change management, training, uh, infrastructure, integration. We're now getting to the reality of what I think we all saw from our experience working for a large technology provider over the years with large enterprise customers, is that they were now in the fundamental reality of digital transformation. How do we get all of the data and infrastructure in place, our processes in place, changing the processes, doing change management to facilitate, an overall AI operational model versus just a pilot, getting out of pilot purgatory. And again, it's just you're not going to prove ROI with pilots. You're not going to prove ROI by issuing press releases. Anyway, that's my view.
So I think the light bulb is a wonderful analogy for a lot of reasons here. Um, First of all, multiple failures, hundreds of failures before Edison got it right. Second is that, once he did, basically they came up with, a standard for the base of the light bulb. That standard didn't change until just a few years ago, right? That was like it's still like, look around the light bulbs in your house. They still have that same screw-in base. Size may differ. But more specifically is that initially, like light bulbs in electric lighting was, the bastion of cities. People in the hinterlands waited years before they were able to get electricity and electric light bulbs. In the cities, there was, massive, first off, the ROI was years because you had to build infrastructure and then people had to buy lamps if they could afford them. And you had, Boston, very famous for it, people who were fighting hard against deployment of electricity and electric lamps because people were going to get electrocuted in the streets. Horses would be electrocuted in the streets. And the people behind that fear were the unions who were responsible for the gas lighters who lit gas lamps every night and then doused them in the morning. It's no different. You've got people who are very afraid because they don't understand it, or they're stoking fears because they know it's going to put them out of work. You have core demographics that are taking and will take advantage of AI, but in terms of it getting to the masses, it's years away. And we don't have standards. So Brian, I think it's a great analogy. And yeah, the ROI didn't come until you were using it for a lot more than just light bulbs.
I think we have to credit Campbell for it. But what's interesting was
Okay.
my grandfather turned 100 around the year 2000, and they were interviewing him and asking him what was the greatest invention of his lifetime. And he was, of anyone in my family, he was the most excited that I was working for IBM. So I knew it was the computer. And he said it was a toss-up between the light bulb and indoor plumbing. And I thought, we could live without AI,
Mhm.
but I don't think I'd want to live without the other two. So innovation is different in perspective. And then the other thing is the difference between Tesla and Edison beyond technology was business. Edison understood how to take it out the door and make now and honestly, I was never not as familiar with Tesla until Elon Musk came out with a Tesla car. So bringing the technology out is one thing, being innovative is one thing. Um, I'm very focused lately on being right is great but it doesn't matter if you don't have a result for what that is. And so what the light bulb may be, is it Chat GPT or Claude, or is it going to be something on your phone? What's going to change the, Mike, to your point, so people open their eyes on the mass population more to see and use it? I don't think we've seen it yet. And on the business side, I'm not sure we're there yet either, because I think we've talked about it, what was it, 2 or 3 podcasts ago, that AI needs a seat at the table for business, because it does. Because until then, IT leads, and IT doesn't have a tradition in the industry of being a very business-led discussion. And this has to be. Otherwise, Campbell, to your point, you won't have the transformation that you need. And if you don't, you won't have the ROI either.
It's the second mouse that gets the cheese, right?
The second mouse
The
gets
second mouse gets the cheese.
because the
First mouse
first
ends up
one's
with its head in the
dead.
mousetrap. And it's possible that AI
It's horribly funny.
it is horribly funny, but it's possible that AI is the first mouse. And the second mouse may be quantum.
I think it's the two together that is the mouse, the second one.
They'll be
If you
smart.
look
Yeah.
at that, they
I'm
have
just thinking,
similar problems to solve, right? Which is error handling.
I'm
And
just,
so,
I'm still thinking of the book Who Moved My Cheese. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
I read that book, didn't we all?
yeah.
There's nothing. Then I'll show my crankiness. There's nothing more irritating at the moment than all the young people that are giving advice on careers of what people over 60 should be doing. And I thought, when you get to 60, call me, but I may not be here anyway, so
I
that's
don't.
okay. So, any last thoughts?
Um, my view is, people are buying, or organizations are buying GPU. They're not buying business processes or changing their business processes currently. They're still treating AI as separate. Now,
Hmm.
the organizations that get it know that this is an operational approach that needs to be taken. It's a systems approach that needs to be taken in order for AI to truly work and to sort of give you that payback. Not in the short term, not within a very short period of time, but over the long term, they'll do much better. That's my view.
Mike?
I think you got it.
So I want to end on a little bit of a different point, which may be the issue is if you're dependent on tokens, you don't really know between the prompt and the result what the tokens in the middle might be. So you don't, GPT-5 now has reasoning, and that reasoning, by the way, costs tokens. So when you're looking at your architecture and your ROI, you need to consider where are you going to deploy it, how that cost is going to be controlled. And that all comes back to where I started, and Campbell, you focused, and Mike, what's the business outcome that's going to be measured to prove that it really did bring value and not a press release or excitement over the weekend. So thank everybody for listening again, and we'll see you in a few weeks. Have a good holiday week, everybody.